Welcome back. You're watching Between the Lines. And before we took our break, Dr. George Knight, our guest today, was explaining the apocalyptic vision which gave birth to Adventism. So why don't we pick up from where we left off?
Okay, we're dealing with the heart of the book of Revelation, which runs from 12:17 up to the end of chapter 14. The rest of the book of Revelation builds upon that passage. And we were reading Revelation 14:6, then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. Whatever this message is, the Bible tells us it needs to go to all the world. You know what? That passage has energized the Adventist church. We're basically a small people. I think we have something like 16 million adult members throughout the world now. But, relatively speaking, in a world of approaching 7 billion, that's not a lot of people.
Right.
But back in the 1920s, the Protestant churches got together and they said, well, we want to divide up the mission fields. And they asked the Adventists, what part do you want? And the Adventist leaders, arrogantly or faithfully, said, we want the whole thing. Why? Because they believed that they had a message that needed to go to the entire world, dealing with the commandments of God at the end of time, dealing with the full everlasting gospel. Verse 7, saying with a loud voice, this is still the first angel, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. And worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of waters.
But I can't even get it out. But the commandments isn't keeping the commandments legalism? I mean, isn't it really saying to God that I want you to approve me, as opposed to saying Christ has made me worthy?
You better get your commandment-keeping baptized, brother.
Well,
according to the New Testament, nobody can get salvation by keeping any commandments. All the law can do is say that you're a sinner, and it can hold up an ideal, but it also says, Paul, in the great gospel, in fact, I've got a book coming out on that called, The Exploring Romans, that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, and nobody can get to heaven by keeping the law.
And is that why he calls it a schoolmaster?
Well, it does. It points up our needs, that we need Jesus Christ as Savior. Okay? So it has an instructional function. But Paul and the rest of the authors in the New Testament basically teach you can't get to heaven by keeping the commandments, but once you've met Christ and have been saved, and when you love Jesus with all your heart and all your mind, Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commandments. First, we're saved, and keeping God's commandments, doing what is right, doing good things in life is a response to salvation.
Yes, but
it's not a way to get salvation.
But why would a church need to be brought to the forefront in history and prophetic time to actually just talk about the commandments? And why is this necessary to go around the world?
Let me just say this. I never said anything about a church necessarily. I'm talking about a Bible message.
Okay.
This is just what God said in prophecy. And that's the one thing different between us, Heather and Samuel and myself. We can't tell what's going to happen.
Okay.
God can tell what's going to happen in the future.
So it's not about a church, it's a message.
It's about a message.
Okay.
And he says, and of course, it's the Adventist church picked up on this message. Other churches can pick up on it too. It's right here in the book of Revelation that God at the end of time would have a commandment message, and that there would be a struggle about this. And then we're going to pick up here in chapter 6 because it begins to tell us more about that message. And never forget, it starts out with gospel. Christianity always starts out with gospel. Saved by grace because of what Jesus has done. But when you get grace that's forgiving grace, you also get transforming grace. New heart, new mind, born again. And you go to Hebrews 8, God writes his law of love in your heart. Commandment keeping is a response to the everlasting gospel. But watch here, this is fascinating. This is fascinating. You've got this first angel, and he says, worship him who made heaven and earth and the sea. Where does that come from? That comes right out of the Ten Commandments. That's an allusion to the fourth commandment. Why do we keep Sabbath? Why does God command it? Because he made heaven and earth and the sea in 6 days and rested on the seventh, going right back to Genesis, demonstrating that the Sabbath was never for the Jews. It was given thousands of years before there was a Jew. It was given for humanity. And that's what Jesus said in Matthew 12, that Sabbath was made for man and woman, not man and woman for the Sabbath. No, and that Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. So this all fits together with the Gospels as set forth by Jesus. Now, the real issue is not outward keeping of the commandments, but who we worship. And the three angels tell us that everybody will be worshiping somebody at the end of time.
So how can we know who we're worshiping?
Well,
how do we define that?
Well, let's let the Bible define it. It says, worship him who made heaven and earth and the sea and the springs of waters. If you don't understand that, go back to Genesis 2, the first 3 verses, and then go to Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments, and it'll explain it all about. That's referring to the fourth commandment, the Sabbath commandment, the seventh day Sabbath commandment at the end of time. And other people, the third angel, if anyone worships the beast in his image, you see at the end of time, not now, but at the end of time, everybody will be worshiping somebody. The question is, in the apocalypse, who will we be worshiping? And now I've got just a couple of seconds here, so I've got to get down to verse 12. And here is the patience of the saints, those who are waiting for Jesus to come. What are they doing while they're waiting? They're keeping the commandments of God, and they have the faith of Jesus, or faith in Jesus. You've got it all right there. At the end of time, God would have a people who are patiently waiting. While they're waiting, they're keeping the commandments and have faith in Jesus as Lord and Savior. Then,
and you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job of walking us right down to the clock. Stay with us. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Dr. George Knight. For more information about any of the books presented today on Between the Lines, visit your local Adventist Book Center or go online at www.adventistbookcenter.com. If you're interested in receiving a copy of today's book and live in the United States and Canada, call 1-800-765-6955. Again, that's 1-800-765-6955.